All right, thank you for staying with us. You're watching Daybreak on Trust TV. Now, we take a look at the dailies on Daybreak. We'll be taking a look at the Daily Trust first, and the headline there, it says, ECOWAS rejects Niger junta's 3-year transition plan. Pro-coup protesters warn ECOWAS against military action. Pope calls for peace in Niger Republic. And all that on page 4. Above the lead story, Tinubu reassigns portfolios, appoints Niger Delta minister. On page 4, Benin, Niger, Togo owe Nigeria 132.2 billion naira energy bills in 4 years. Bandits kill 5 men, kidnap women, rustle animals in Katsina. Now, other stories there. Kano Tribunal, stop influencing judges. TMG cautions politicians. On page 16. Abandoned day-old baby dies in flood. On page 28. CBN brings back BDACs, introduces new operational mechanism. So these are the main stories on Daily Trust this morning.
Let's move to the Punch newspaper this morning there, and the major story there says federal government prioritize economy, security as ministers take oath today. The writers there says President's 8-point agenda to guide appointees. Ministers complete documentation at SGF office. Tinubu renames Environment Ministry, appoints Niger Delta Minister, reassigns Oyetola and others. Beside that, you see farmers abandon farms, 23 Sokoto, Zamfara, Kebbi local government areas under bandits. NDLEA recovers 4.8 billion naira drugs from wanted billionaires' Lagos warehouse. And miscreant traders take over multi-million naira Lagos bus stops. Now, at the top of the newspaper there, you'd see Nigeria loses 249 billion naira in July as oil output drops. CBN loan to manufacturers, aviation firms rise to 5.6 trillion naira. And Niger, ECOWAS rejects the junta's 3-year transition plan. Now, these are some of the stories on the Punch newspaper this morning.
All right, now on the Daily Independent newspaper, the lead story, it says inflation pushing lower naira denominations into extinction. You have ECOWAS rejects Niger junta's 3-year power transition plan. We read that on Daily Trust. Saraf asked Tinubu to stop Wike, Umahi, others from getting pensions. You also have Falana asked DSS to release Bawa, says remand order has expired. NDLEA recovers 4.8 billion naira opioids, intercepts $20 million fake notes. So you also have stakeholders, Rule Lerner as aviation minister, set agenda. Well, these are the main stories on the Daily Independent newspaper today.
And on the Vanguard this morning, from the top, it says, brutally frank, many governors wealthier than their states. That's according to Clark. And also the stories that it's trending this morning, the NDLEA, the bust of warehouse in Lagos of about 4.8 billion naira opioids. And we have Tinubu appoints Momo as minister designate for the Niger Delta. The lead story is about the Niger and ECOWAS rejecting the junta's 3-year transitions. And at the bottom of that picture there, it says old age poverty to increase as pension coverage stagnates and population rises. And these are some of the stories on the Vanguard newspaper today.
All right. So let's get some perspectives to the stories that we've just highlighted on our newspapers. We have our guest reviewer in the studio, Suleiman Ubagaya. He is the CEO, Sky Limit Media Group, and editor and former deputy President, Nigeria Guild of Editors. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, a number of stories this morning talking about Niger, talking about the economy, talking about the ministers designate swearing in today. But let's start with a story here that I find very interesting on the Daily Independent newspaper, talking about inflation. That's the lead story. It says, inflation pushing lower naira denomination in nations into extinction. So you're talking about 100 naira, 50 naira, 20 naira. I can't even remember when last I saw some
naira.
of those some of those denominations, you know, and all. Do you think that we are even Nigeria as a Nigerian government is concerned about the going into extinction of those naira notes?
Well, it doesn't look like government is really concerned about that, because government has not really addressed the issues that have been bringing about the rate of inflation getting worse and worse every day. You know, the last time I checked, the National Bureau of Statistics put the rate of inflation at I think 33% or thereabouts. That is very, very high. You know, one of the highest anywhere in the world. So government really has not been doing much in terms of addressing the issue of lower denominations of our currency, the naira. You know.
With the cashless policy last year, is it last year or early this year? Early this year, the whole cashless, we heard how the CBN governor at the time rolled out a number of policies, which part of it was to ensure the disbursement or distribution of the lower naira notes, 100 naira, 200 naira, into the ATM machines, so that when people go there, they even get, because partly somehow I feel that the lack of this lower naira notes is in itself contributing to the inflation. You know, somehow it's like a vice versa kind of a thing.
You know, there is this thing, people say talk is cheap. The CBN governor really has made that step, in order that the suspended CBN governor, because he is still the CBN governor, he made that statement about the need for the lower denominations to be more in circulation. But have they been in circulation? Have you been seeing them on any ATM machine? You don't see them. You know, when you go there, go to any ATM machine, what you see are the 1,000 naira notes and the 500 naira notes. You don't even see 200 naira notes. So they were just engaging in rhetorics, you know, and certainly it's just a statement to deceive the Nigerian public, because they are not putting it into action.
All right, well, let's take on other stories. Like we've seen, we are also seeing the lead story on the Daily Trust newspaper talking about the Niger junta. ECOWAS is rejecting the plan by the military junta for a 3-year transition plan. I mean, this is being almost like the routine. When the coup plotters come in, they just say, well, we're going to hand over to civilian government after so period of time and all that. What do you make of this?
Well, like ECOWAS has stated, it is just a small screen for diplomacy and dialogue on the part of the coup plotters. Of course, it's a step in the right direction, because at least it's a step forward, better than the previous position held by the coup-fist, that they were not ready for dialogue with anybody. At least some progress is now being made. You know, at least we have now heard them saying they want to be allowed to rule for 3 years. It is up to ECOWAS to, you know, maintain its position that there is no way they can be allowed to rule for 3 years. Transition to civilian rule should, as maximally it can be done in 6 months. You know, at least it has happened in Nigeria when Abacha died in 1998. The government of Abdulsalam Abubakar was able to conclude transition to civilians within less than a year. So it's achievable also in Niger Republic.
Right.
Except at this time.
You know, when you see the situation of Sudan, you know, and how it's panning out now with the whole giving them particular period of time that they want, we know how consuming power can be. You know, when you're in power for a long time, you don't want to leave that power. It's not like democracy that people can, at the end of your tenure, you know you have to go if the people vote you out. So do you think it would be wise, you know, for the ECOWAS and the other union, the AU, EU, that are still deliberating on this, giving it time for the Niger juntas to even gather more reinforcements. We've seen news of Mali and Guinea, helping out with a lot of war equipment. So do you think it's okay? Is it wise for this ECOWAS and these bodies to take time in making the decision?
Honestly, they are helpless. I think that's the best they can do. The junta employed a deliberate strategy to occasion this delay you are talking about. ECOWAS sent a delegation led by Nigeria's former head of state, Abdulsalam Abubakar. They refused to allow that delegation leave the Niamey airport. They were confined only to the airport and attended to only by some middle-level members of the junta. So they had to leave empty-handed. All these were delayed tactics to occasion the kind of situation you are now talking about. You understand? ECOWAS is helpless in the sense that it cannot rush to a war with Niger Republic, given the repercussions, the potential repercussions. Of course, it's going to be an escalation. If you are talking about ECOWAS, it's a 15-member bloc. At least 3 members of the bloc are not with ECOWAS as far as this Niger issue is concerned. Guinea is not there, Mali is not there, Burkina Faso is not there. And don't forget also the fact that 2 of the biggest militaries in Africa, that is Egypt and Algeria, are somewhat supporting Niger. Let's also not forget about the Wagner mercenaries, the Russians. They are said to be on ground already, So it's not going to be an easy thing. ECOWAS has very limited options left. And some of the options will be said to be, peace-saving. So for me, ECOWAS should maintain its sanctions, because the sanctions are going to put the neck of the junta to at least see reason and accept some of the conditionalities of ECOWAS. But certainly it has to be a kind of bread and stick, you understand?
Okay, we've seen the kind of support that the military junta is enjoying on the streets of Niger. We've seen how young people are even coming out to say, well, we are willing to volunteer to join the military for the armed forces in Niger to fight if needs be, and generally they're enjoying some kind of support where the protesters are even warning ECOWAS of intervening and all that. When you look at that, do you see a situation where, even after going to the table for dialogue or discussion, the military junta or perhaps the head of the military junta will resign as a military officer and become a civilian and then contest election?
That remains a very big possibility. Indeed, the junta is popular. You are completely right. It's very popular. And what is it that brings about its popularity? It is the fact that the government of President Bazoum has not been able to address the concerns of Nigerians, that is the people of Niger Republic. There is a lot of poverty, unprecedented poverty, probably occasioned by policies of some of the colonial masters or former colonial masters like France. It has not been able to allow Niger to enjoy its mineral resources optimally. So that has not given Niger the kind of resources it requires to service its people properly, to make life easier, and to build the kind of infrastructure that will make Niger as a country a better place than it is. Remove it also from being the poorest nation in the world as it is presently. So I think it's a lesson for us in Nigeria and the rest of Africa that when you are governing, you should govern with a kind of humanity. You have to consider the fact that the suffering of the people must be mitigated for you to govern properly.
Now, do you think that this goodwill that the junta is, having from the Nigerians pose some kind of challenge to ECOWAS itself? Because you cannot shave the head of a man, in his absence, they say. So does this pose a challenge to, ECOWAS intervention?
Yeah, it does. Because when you don't, like General Babangida has been saying, one of the grounds the military leverages upon to stage a successful coup is when there is discontent in the society. And there has been that discontent in the Niger society, which brings about a situation where, which has led to the situation we are now seeing. You know, a situation where even though nobody wants military rule, but the people have been fully supportive of the military rulers because of the fact that at least it gives them a renewed kind of hope, you know, hope that maybe tomorrow will be better than today, you know. So for me, it's a very mighty challenge, honestly. It's not going to be easy for ECOWAS to stage a coup, to stage a war that is hugely unpopular. Practically nobody in any of the other 13 ECOWAS countries is supportive of the war being planned by ECOWAS. The citizens are not supportive. Only the leaders and probably some of their followers in government are supportive of that.
Okay, so away from the Niger military coup there, we have on Punch newspaper says farmers abandon farms and 23 Sokoto, Zamfara, Kebbi and other local governments under bandits. So, you know, the matter of insecurity is one of the issues, you know, terrorizing, you know, the Nigerian farmers at this point. And people are calling on the president, you know, to help on that. Let's not forget about the whole complaint of Nigerians pointing out the former governors of some of these states being given another position. So what do you think the administration should do in order to tackle insecurity? Because we know farmers, you know, abandoning their farms is already part of the issues we're having on food scarcity in the country and the inflation of food prices. So what's your take on that?
That is a very serious issue the government must address as quickly as possible. But unfortunately, even though a lot of Nigerians have invested and continue to invest a lot of hope in the Tinubu administration, it does not seem to be doing enough in terms of tackling our security concerns in Nigeria. For example, up to now, I do not see why, I do not represent the military and I'm not speaking on their behalf, but I do not see why up to now, not even one military person has been appointed into the government, the new cabinet that is going to be inaugurated today, any moment from now. Even though there are very senior generals that have served in the presidential campaign, you know, none of them has been considered yet for an appointment as a minister. The National Security Advisor, Malam Nuhu Ribadu, even though is competent, is a retired policeman. And now look at it, to add salt to injury, the defense minister is also a civilian. I do not mean, or I'm not saying a civilian cannot be appointed defense minister, but not in a time of war, you know. You can appoint, of course, people cite the example of Kwankwaso, who held the position of defense minister 20 years ago. But 20 years ago, you can sleep, you can choose to park your car and sleep right at any time of the day or night on the Kaduna-Abuja highway, for example. You know, now you can't even, people are afraid to drive either in the morning, in the day, or at night. You understand, because of the kind of the heavy insecurity that we experience. So we require someone, it's like the proverb you mentioned, you cannot shape somebody's head in his absence. You want to stage a war with Niger Republic, you have serious security issues, and yet you cannot consider a senior military general, either serving or retired, for the position of defense minister or any senior position.
It's just looking like the government is helpless. I mean, terrorists, bandits are owning local governments, and it's taking long for the government to do something, which is giving them the strength to, you know, continue in their shenanigans. So is it that the government is helpless on matter of security?
That's what I'm saying. The government, well, if it becomes helpless, it's because it has chosen to be helpless. It has an alternative, like I said. You know, it goes beyond appointing civilians to all the key security positions. You need a military person, honestly speaking, and this is just the reality. You cannot have a national security advisor, a retired policeman, which is okay. Malam Nuhu Ribadu is hugely competent, we all know. But defense minister, and you are appointing two of them from the same northwest region. What of note is that he's being bedeviled by terrorism, Boko Haram terrorism. Of course, we know about the fact that the banditry is mostly in the northwest. But then, what did Matola do when he was governor of Zamfara State in terms of tackling banditry in Zamfara? And here you are appointing him as Minister of State for Defense. So it doesn't make sense at all.
It's a topic for another day, a deep one. Thank you so much, Mr. Suleiman Obagaya, Sky Limits Media Group Editor and former Deputy President, Nigerian Guild of Editors. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
All right, and with that, we wrap up Daybreak on Trust TV. Make sure you stay put for the sports update to be bringing that we will be bringing you this morning. I am Sumaya Abubakar. Have a lovely week.
And I am Ayuba Ile. Thank you so much for watching the show. Join us again tomorrow for another time.